Respected Vice Chancellor, Utkal University, Pro Vice Chancellor Kits, Professor Upendra Padi, distinguished colleagues from the profession, media persons, and my bright and young research scholars who have come to make their presentations on various themes of the conference, as Upendra Padi briefly mentioned, zeroes in on media in the era of artificial intelligence. This focus seems to privilege either artificial intelligence as the so-called cutting edge of the present assimilation and distribution system, or it privileges media in all its dimension. The media that we understood or have been following, analyzed and criticized in many of our institutions, it would be a cliche to say that it has changed and transformed. We used to make a distinction between communication and media as part of our introductory classes, where communication obviously referred to the larger contextual processes that, with or without media, still held the societies in some kind of a networking relationships. The era of media slightly changed that networking potential to the notion of a focused attempt by mediation of institutions to gather and distribute information. The timeline of communication has had many progressive developments, and some have been described as disruptive in terms of what they have been able to do in different societies. We also had in the past talked about the differential concerns in many societies as a consequence of media's functioning or dysfunctioning. The era of telecommunication and convergence altered the immense potential of what we understand as media to distribute information. There was also a concept which we debated and discussed, the notion of knowledge societies. Because historically, in every society, you always have the concept of what is knowledge and who holds that knowledge. Sociologically, economically, and politically, monopolies of knowledge and monopolies on knowledge have been a recurrent theme, not necessarily only in India, but other societies as well. Media was supposed to and is supposed to break that monopoly and become a bridge towards what we call as democratization of knowledge. It also is supposed to speak on behalf of the people. In fact, freedom of the people and expression is the derivative on which the whole notion of freedom of media is built. It's a different matter that media as institutions became large economic enterprises the concept of consolidation, aggregation, etc., are known to us. And there are a lot of critical reflections of what can economic and political concentration do with regard to the democratic functions of institutions. Data-driven journalism is talked about more profoundly in the recent past. However, journalism, in fact, historically, is based on data and factual at that. The interpretation, the analytical frameworks have always been done by the agency of human beings. That is why we had a very strong tradition of the reporting, editing, and other kind of setup, of which many senior people are here who have led many newspapers, including the honor that we gave to the foremost journalists of this particular state. We have in the past in National Media Conference, Conclave, discussed many facets of media. So when Upendra Pade and his colleagues were debating and had foregrounded this as a theme, media in the artificial intelligence era, one was whether we celebrate and overemphasize this development. To my mind, such kind of euphoria is perhaps not warranted, but the euphoria should be as to how and where both its limits and potential are. So, when we discussed, we took a broad institutional dimension to it. Any development, any technology, any intervention, particularly in the Indian context, has always had the intervention by the state, by the government. I can give you instances where all kinds of divides have been addressed formally by the government and international organizations, one way or the other. When we didn't have the facility of telephones, the concept of missing link paradigm came about. The question then was, how do we give access to communication devices? Today, all of you know that there is a massive spread, and today people are talking about literacy, inclusivity, and whatnot. So one aspect of the seminar we felt was to try and focus on how is the state, how are the state institutions looking at this development? Because AI, as many of you know already, stems from the larger developments in computing and associated technologies. So unless there is a promotion, unless there is a support system, many of these things cannot develop. So one of the important institutional interventions or presentations we thought could be how does the promotion and how does the facilitation of AI across and among institutions take place. So that's one perspective we had. The second perspective we had was there is a large-scale universal understanding of what AI can do in the media. So whether it is data aggregation, data assimilation, data presentation, fact-checking, etc., there's a whole lot of institutional adoption that AI has been able to do. In India, there have been formative attempts, but journalists by themselves have adapted to fact-checking and many other means. It doesn't have to require a proactive advice to the media persons because who are always in the lead of trying to adopt what is available as a tool for bettering their profession. So journalism and media as a profession, how does it look at and how does it use AI was the second dimension of the seminar that we decided to focus. Third was, of course, the academia. Now, here by default, the academia, what we mean is, of course, the journalism and media education. Somebody in the opening session was pointing out there are only teachers and not many professions. I think I heard it in terms of RT time. What happens is, if you have about 300 or 400 institutions of all kinds, let us not talk about what kind of institutions we are, but we are a significant number. How has AI as a notion, as a concept, as an application, is making intervention in the JNC education? Is it a critical perspective or is it a skill? There are many a time we often get bogged down by the skills obsession. We forget the critical dimension of AI. So the third focus, of course, is the question of journalism and academic perspectives on AI. Then, of course, we have the larger societal issues of ethics and other responsibilities as a consequence of AI. Many a time, the theme seems to be obsessive. But let me tell you, as a conclave, it is not the obsession with the theme that matters. Society has to encounter many of these issues one time or the other. And what better place to begin than academic fora like this? I'm encouraged by the fact that Upendra Badi tells me more than 60 papers are on different aspects of the theme, which means that the youngsters are thinking about the theme, about the application, about the limitation. So I'm looking forward to that concentration of scholars' output in the parallel sessions. Of course, the 4 or 5 plenary themes that Upendra mentioned revolve around some of the themes that I talked about. Finally, we have to recognize that any cutting edge phenomenon lasts as long as its enthusiasm is. But societies and professions settle down. We always anticipated and were apprehensive of many developments in the past. We have learned to live with them. The ecosystem has learned to negotiate with them. And I'm sure this also will be an important tool for better usage. I don't want to get into the connotation of AI. There are more professional and technically qualified people who look at it. But sometimes, jokes apart, has artificial intelligence come because natural intelligence has gone away from society? The answer is no. It is because of natural intelligence only artificial intelligence has come into our being. So the natural and the artificial go hand in hand. On that positive note, I wish Upendra Padi and his team a very bright success in the organization of the conclave, and I thank the dignitaries for having blessed us with their presence this morning. Thank you very much.